So welcome to our podcast, our ongoing series on onboarding. And this is our sixth and final series. So really excited to be here with this amazing group of people. So today we're going to be looking at how to measure the success of your onboarding experience. We've talked a lot through various channels, podcast videos, and some documentation. We've looked a lot at how to build, how to create, how to consider what a good onboarding program is and you know what to do to make it successful. But now we're at the end of that and we have to consider, was it successful and what have we put in place to make it successful? So I've grabbed three quite honestly amazing people from the SwissVBS office. I've grabbed them and pulled them into this room and we're just going to have an informal conversation on this topic. So I'm here with Josh and Dave and Tatsiana, three people who have done a lot in the realm of measuring and looking at success. So thanks, guys. And let's just kick it off. So back to my original comment. So we've created what is arguably an award-winning onboarding program. Now we're in a position where we have to look back and say, was it successful? What can we measure? Where do we start with that conversation? Let's say I'm new to this game. Where do I start to look and to find those measurements?
I think, to be able to measure success, you first have to be able to define success. And so you need to think about, what does success look like for you in terms of learner outcomes and in terms of business outcomes. I think for me, that's the place to start. What does success look like for learners? What do you want them to know, to feel, to be able to do by the end of this training? And what are you hoping to achieve from a business perspective? Is it cost savings? Is it efficiency? Is it talent retention, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so obviously coming to the end and then kind of saying, what should I measure, probably isn't the best approach. It's something that you would have thought of earlier on. So let's just dive into that a bit more. So let's talk, what is the difference between a business and a learner metric? Like when we say it's got to meet both the business needs and the learner needs, what sort of things do we keep in mind for that?
So one of the things that we talk a lot about on the Learning Design Team is trying to define success at the various levels that exist. So we're trying to solve the learning challenge, but we're also trying to solve the business challenge. And there's something that kind of governs both in terms of the metrics that we design. And not only that, especially from our view of a project, there's also the project team themselves, the learning and development team, the manager, that are obviously highly invested in the outcomes and the success of this program. So when we're talking about success and measuring success, we almost kind of think of it at three different levels. One is at the learner level, the other is at the business level, and then the other one finally is at the project team level too. And coming back to what Dave was talking about, one of the things we talk a lot about is the idea of just data maturity within an organization. So when we're talking about defining success, that's really a relative question because it all depends on how far your organization has come across in dealing with data and measuring data and extrapolating success from it. So on a business level, obviously, onboarding metrics that are critically tied to it is talent retention, talent development. But on a learner level, it's things like confidence in the role or speed to competency. Perhaps maybe for the project team, depending on if you're, creating a digital version of your program, perhaps just general satisfaction with scalability or accessibility of it, or how quickly you're able to deploy, because we know when it comes to onboarding, if you can save a matter of months, that's a huge savings for the organization. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go in terms of how you want to approach success. But I think my sort of key takeaway is start small and practical within your organization. Ask yourselves, how can we look back at this program 6 months from now? And what are the various data inputs that we can take to know that it was a success?
Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of concepts in there, and one of them is this whole notion of data maturity and where am I as an organization with respect to what I can actually measure. So I guess I'm thinking a bit about the technology, right? So if I want to measure something, I have certain constraints that are dependent on the technology I have to do that. So let's talk a bit about that. So what are some of the ways that we can leverage technology to measure success. And Tatsiana, maybe we can talk a bit about mobile, because a lot of onboarding is going mobile now. And so what is sort of at our disposal that maybe we didn't have 10 years ago to start to look at different metrics?
Right. So we are a little bit lucky with the clients who work and who choose to work with the mobile through our mobile learning platform, because we also have the data analytics, Power BI data analytics to back us up. But again, this did scare a lot of clients because of the big data and all the scary words out there. And coming back to Josh's point, we all started with small, and it's completely okay to go after small wins. What we found out is that small wins compound. And you go at it one data point at a time. You ask one question, you don't ask 100 questions. And you use the technology, the mobile technology, to measure learner engagement. Some of the examples that those one data points that the clients went after would be level of competency mastery, one simple metric, or performance of a specific competency, or performance over time. All of this is possible to measure through user engagement with the mobile learning platform.
And you actually bring up a good point, Tatsiana, about measuring something over time. And I think that's one of the really great things you can do with your onboarding program from a data perspective, is that when you've got time for measurement, now you've opened new doors in terms of benchmarking, in terms of pre and post, in terms of even tracking historical trends of how things are doing. Of course, onboarding has a variety of different angles. Some of them are very high level information about your organization, and some of them are highly technical, highly specific, highly targeted information that leads to very critical performance objectives. But I think regardless of what type of onboarding experience you're creating, there's a role and room to be played over there for this idea of creating a program that takes place over time from a data perspective, because selfishly speaking, you can now have various data points to track progress and growth over time, which can easily be translated into some clear wins for you if you want to go down that road.
And even if it's something as simple as, sending out an online survey of managers or of employees, don't just do it right after the training. Do it 1 month after the training, do it 3 months after the training, do it 6 months after the training. And there are all kinds of online tools available to do that sort of thing. To make it really easy. And
to that point as well, too, one of the metrics that we're using for a current client right now is this idea of pride in the organization. So they're struggling with talent retention. It's a huge talent pool out there, and they're trying to find the best of the best. And in that industry, if they lose someone and they get poached, then that's a huge blow to their organization. So having pride in the organization when they first join, confidence in their role is really important to them. So what we're actually doing is we're creating a quarterly review survey out there that we ask the same questions every quarter to them and saying, how do you feel? Are you getting the right talent and development the right development and skills that you need to be within the organization? Do you still feel pride from the day you started with the organization? So all of these things we check in, and coming back to benchmarking, we use this as a way to continually say, hey, are we moving in the right direction or are we not? And Brett, to your point about how there is a role to be played for something offline or something that's non-technology invested, this is something that we're doing with just manual surveys. It's not sophisticated technology whatsoever, but it's just a matter of creating a simple survey that can be done through a SurveyMonkey or whatever that may be. So not too dependent on sophisticated technology or proprietary technology per se.
So I just want to pick up on a couple of things. So when Tatsiana was talking, we were talking about mobile, and so maybe just so we can break it down really clearly. So what would you say is the biggest difference between leveraging data gathered from mobile versus data gathered from a traditional large LMS? That's really for anybody here. Like, how much more data can we actually get through the mobile world?
Right. With some of the clients, when we started, all they had was the LMS data, this isolated attendance or completion rates. And moving from that static data to something that is tracking progress over time, or time to competency, or seeing users and learners perform better in scenario-based environments. Those were already great points. And the beauty of the mobile and the data behind is that you don't have to poll them. You basically monitor the engagement, and you derive those insights from there as they go, as they take the learning and as they progress.
And is it easy to access that data? Like, do you
Absolutely.
have to go to a IT department or?
No, with everything that's available right now, everything is customized, everything is dashboards, so you not only can have access for the whole team that needs to see that data points, you can send this data around, you can pull out dashboards that show a specific spike in something or an interesting data insight, and you can send it to your managers, to your team members, etc. It's, again, the mobile technology tied to dashboards and sophisticated analytics that's made in a user-friendly way for everyone to use in the company, and you yourself don't have to be a data analyst to do it.
So maybe we should close up. I just have one or two other questions, and let's bring it back very specifically to onboarding. So we've launched this onboarding campaign. I was curious about something, Josh. You said, like, when we're talking about measuring, we all know it's difficult to measure soft skill development, things that are change management oriented. It's easier in some respects, it's easier to measure ROI as it pertains to retention, because you can simply say we've hired 50 people, there's only 30 after 6 months and so on. But how do we measure, or what are some practical ways that we can measure, is this person, are they being fully utilized in their job? Are they really enjoying their work? Like, how do we measure that? Because part of the goal, I think, when we developed this onboarding campaign was a successful onboarding campaign ensures that everyone that comes into the organization is empowered, they're thriving, they like their work, right? That's the ultimate state. How do we measure things like that? And I think you mentioned, surveys is one thing, but just any other practical advice for our listeners?
I think sometimes you have to get personal and have, focus groups. Mm-hmm. And you can have those, again, a month after, 3 months after, 6 months after, if you have the resources, depending on the size of your organization, talk to people.
And so who's doing that in your mind, Dave?
I think either someone from HR or a learning design team. I think it could be really anybody who is invested in making sure that these new hires are doing what they're supposed to be doing and enjoying their experience the way they're supposed to.
It's funny, one of the things that we always hear when we're talking to clients about developing their onboarding program, one of the things you first hear is, well, we just want to make sure people feel welcome. And from a measurement standpoint, that's just what does that even mean, right? Yeah. But when I think about the nature of onboarding, certainly at a global level, where you're just trying to get initial sort of ideas about the org across, you're really just trying to eliminate anxiety and eliminate unneeded stress on the job. You're trying to remove that first layer so that people can feel confident and comfortable. So a lot of it comes down to this idea of comfort and confidence in role, and that can be measured in a variety of ways. Obviously, when you've got more technical information, you can have more specific data points that support it. But when you're talking about holistic things like, do you have an understanding of your company's values or its mission for the next 5 years? Yeah, you can say that you know it, but I think what people are more interested about is, are you excited about it? Mm-hmm. Coming back to this idea of talent retention. So I'd say one of the things to sort of push within your own learning teams is to ask yourselves, what really are we trying to get out of this onboarding program outside of imparting information on people? Because that's always going to be there. But what are the higher ideas that sort of govern this experience that you can try and evaluate and monitor?
Mm-hmm. Any last comments for our listeners?
I think Josh said this earlier, but start small, do what's possible, and build from there. Mm-hmm. Having some data is better than having no data.
I guess you have to be realistic, right? Understanding these are my limitations. This is what I have at my disposal to measure.
But also get started for sure, because even if it sounds scary down the road, that's exactly what's going to help you.
Great point, Tatsiana. I think that people tend to be very afraid of data for that reason, but it's amazing once you actually start working with a little bit of data, no matter how amateur you may be or feel about it, even that little bit gets you going because you've suddenly got a framework for a conversation moving forward. Like, oh, this is an interesting point. I don't know anything about it at this point, or I can't conclude anything, but maybe my next X can help me inform that better. Mm-hmm. So my advice would just be to push yourself as an organization to kind of get out of your comfort zone, look past those completion rates or, just those, smiley sheets, and saying, well, what is that new onboarding metric that we can hang our hat on?
Mm-hmm. Speaking of smiley sheets, I'm going to hand one out to you guys, and I'd like you to give me feedback on how you think this podcast went. And thanks so much for all your time, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brad.
Cheers.